What is up, good people? Welcome back to another video version of the podcast. This is a special one and requires a little bit of story time. Today I'm talking to Travis Stever from Coheed and Cambria, L.S. Dunes, and a bunch of other stuff that we discuss on this episode. I think you're gonna love it. It is just chock full of music talk, a little bit of gear talk, a little bit of Coheed history, a little bit of everything on this one. And on this episode, we kind of made some plans to hang out. This was recorded a couple weeks ago, and now Coheed is on tour with the legendary Primus, and they were coming to Portland. But, unfortunately, I had to go to Nashville for a surprise visit. I know, boo-hoo, so you gotta go to Nashville. But I really wanted to see this. I've never seen Primus, and I love Coheed, and I wanted to hang out, and I saw on the schedule that they were playing Bend, Oregon the week before, so I gathered the family up, threw them in the family truckster, and we drove to Bend, Oregon for a long weekend of hanging out, eating, and some other stuff.
Yeah, boy!
And of course, hanging out with the crew and catching an amazing performance. If you are considering going to this Coheed co-headlining tour with Primus, I definitely suggest it. It is fantastic. I loved it. The show is awesome. Make sure you go to it. But in the meantime, I've got an episode with Travis Stever to get to, and there is some new music on it. Some new music that you probably haven't heard, so make sure you watch to the very end because you're not gonna wanna miss this. This is so unexpected, so cool, and we had an epic conversation. I think you're gonna like it. That's enough blabbering. Let's get into this episode. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today I have Travis Stever from Coheed and Cambria, L.S. Dunes, and probably a lot of other stuff that I'm not fully aware of because you're a busy man.
I try and stay as busy as possible. Thanks for having me, Blake. Yeah, it's all the other stuff that I've gotten involved with is because it's like I finally have come to the conclusion that the way for me to stay sane is to stay busy. And the best way for me to stay busy is making music. I sometimes like to think of like, and it could happen where as long as I'm doing okay, because, you know, being musicians and you'll understand this, like the way to make a living if you're lucky enough to do so is touring. Okay. So we tour so much, but when we do get home, I get restless and feel like if I'm not working on something musically, then I'm not working at all. And I've often thought like, okay, if I'm financially okay, like, and I'm home for like a couple of months at some point and there's no recording going on or anything, which hasn't happened yet, but this is hypothetical. If it was happening, like, could I go down to my friend who owns the record store in town and be like, look, I would just like to be able to work here just because I want to be around music. Like, it could happen. Like, I could just be burnt. Like, there's so many different aspects in music. Like, it's hard because, like, there are certain people that have established themselves with podcasts and, like, you, where you have an audience and you have people, like, I have friends that have worked so hard at it and they're good at it. So sometimes when I see other friends just jump on the bandwagon and they're like, yeah, I'm going to do a podcast. That's it. And I'm like, well, these other people have been doing it for years and they've really worked hard at it. Not that it's not like it's like music in general. It's like, okay, the more the merrier. But, you know, I feel like there's so many people that are really good at doing interviews and stuff like that. Part of my whole thing is just loving to like dork out, if that's the right way to put it, about records, music, just a single part in one song that makes my hair stand up. what's a better place to do that than like at a record store or something? So I reserve the right to do something like that someday. I never want to own my own record store or music store because that sounds horrific in itself. But I don't know. It's just hard. It goes back to what I said. It's like I usually wind up being like, well, if there's something I can get involved in. And it's never like I don't have these delusions that the thing that I'm getting involved in is going to be this other thing that's going to be fruitful, you know, like a fruitful money endeavor or something like that. It's really to stay busy and make music. Like we're lucky as musicians if we get that out of anything we do, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and I get it too, where I don't know, for me, I've had moments where I'm like, wow, it's rare and it hasn't happened in a long time where I'm like, oh, yeah, I got a week where I don't have a lot scheduled. I don't really have to do anything. So I'm not going to, in my brain, I'm like, I'm going to take this time and just relax, not worry about working of any sort really. And I get about a day and a half to 2 days into that, and it's like, nope, gotta do something. And
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but I don't know that, people talk about retiring and all that, and I totally understand that, especially at the jobs I used to work, but I just don't see actual retirement in my future until I'm just physically incapable of doing anything.
Yeah. I mean, because it's part of our life. I mean, even just sitting here talking about music, talking about like guitars and gear and stuff like that, like that's just what we do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll sit and discuss, like, you know, which album's better by which artist, you know, till the sun comes up, just because that's what I love. Like, if I had the chance to be able to discuss those things for a living, why would you ever stop doing it?
Yeah, you can't,
No.
and it's just it's part of the DNA, I think, and I think that it actually that dovetails nicely into something I was talking with a guy yesterday at the gym. He, sometimes at gyms you'll see the same person there because they kind of go at the same time as you, and you gotta kind of give them a head nod, or maybe you spot each other once in a while or whatever, but you like don't know their name for like a year because you never
Oh,
really
yeah.
you don't really talk to them. And there was a dude like that at the gym that we'd actually talked for the first time. Turns out he's a bassist and is super into all that stuff. And I was like, oh, well, wouldn't you know it? That's my whole life too. And so, we couldn't help but just start dorking out on, everything basically. But he said something that I thought was really interesting, that I hadn't really thought of too in depth before. But to make any of this stuff work, whether you're touring and writing records or doing anything kind of creative and tangential to the music industry, you've got to have like 47 irons in the fire pretty much at all times. And I don't know anybody else that has not had that like be the case. Maybe, Bruce Springsteen can just be Bruce Springsteen, but there's a lot that entails too. You know what I mean?
But he wasn't being like. It's funny that you mention that. Like I watched little Stevie, Steven's thing documentary, which just came out on HBO, which was really intriguing. Like, because like how, he was a huge political activist in the
Mm-hmm.
80s, and I knew that, but I didn't know the depth of how involved he got with a lot of stuff. And Bruce Springsteen, even though there was some hardship in their relationship because, amazingly enough, after however many years, he left the E Street Band to do his own thing, which was mostly releasing political albums with his band and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Springsteen would be involved in a lot of that. And then you even see these side things that they were both involved in, and you're like, and I mean, it just blew my mind even to think that those first three Springsteen records, and I knew this before, but really thinking about it because he was playing with them by then, and they did stuff with the Southside Johnny, and they did stuff together on these other projects, and he didn't even play on those first three records. On
Mm-hmm.
Born to Run, he helped him write horn sections for 10th Avenue Freeze Out which made the song. Let's face it, like that song wouldn't have been anything without those horn arrangements and how they go. But he didn't even play guitar on it. It was all Bruce Springsteen. So it's
Right.
like when you find these things out, like it's interesting. I could constantly be precious in my life about, especially being in a band like Coheed and Cambria, where the main songwriter is such an incredible guitar player. It's hard, like if you spend your life being constantly precious about, if you're not getting there in time, there's going to be something awesome played already. And especially in this day and age where there's endless possibilities for recording, like most of the people I know, I don't now, but most of the people I know have beautiful studio spaces like you have behind you and like what you need now, and so therefore, how can you expect to, like, I'm a collaborator. I love collaborating with people, but you've also got to understand your position sometimes. It's like at 45, I finally understand that even with working with any musicians I respect, let's put L.S. Dunes in there. Like, if depending on who the song comes from, like, let's say Frank has a bunch of guitars written for a song and the chorus already has a lead on it, like, and it works perfectly. You're not going to change that just because you're like, I want it to be me,
Right.
Like, and I dealt with a lot of that throughout the years, even with Coheed. Like, did I have numerous times where I'd nail it and create some sort of lead stuff to a song that Claudio had, and he was excited, and everybody's like, that's great, yes. But are those times where, like, I'm kind of at a loss? Because when the song doesn't come initially from you, the cool thing is, and I don't want to go too far with it, but one of the things I always found relieving about writing is that if a song is based on, like, a riff I have, my job is done. I'm safe.
Right.
What a way to look at it, though. And I've kind of started to change that. Like, it's not even my job is done because I want to keep working. I want to be part of the song no matter what. Because let's face it, when you're collaborating, you want to keep adding together and get that communication happening sonically. But I always struggled with that kind of like, okay, I'm in that. I'm there. I'm safe. Like, it's not like I'm going to be completely absent from it. But there are songs where you like, and I'm quoting Frank from L.S. Dunes, and he said it a lot, and I'm sure a lot of other musicians use this, but I kind of never heard anybody use it as often. But there's times where you take a knee. You realize it's better to take a knee during the writing or when the song's even complete. And that was a hard thing for me to come to in life often, where it would be like, well, why am I even here then?
Right.
Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's why, like, if I feel like I'm lucky because I can look back with Coheed and, and we only have the one record out now and an EP with L.S. Dunes and countless other. I had a project called Davenport Cabinet for years. And all those things, like and that was with my cousin, and if he was writing, you know what I mean? He would have ideas for certain things, and I grew and learned that you got to do what's best for the song, right? You got to do what's best for the song, and, if you're not the one that's going to bring that, you got to just take the knee.
Yeah. Take the knee, serve the song. That's what another way I've heard it said, like, just serve the song, just do what the song needs. Because, we always want to have the sickest riff or the coolest part or the whatever. That's like a little bit of our ego, working in there. But
it's in there, yeah.
Sometimes it's not necessary. Sometimes it makes the song worse than, which we hate to admit to ourselves, but it's true. So yeah, take a knee. That's a great way to phrase it. And since we're down this track, actually, and I'm sure you've gotten this question a bunch of times, what does the writing process look like for L.S. Dunes versus Coheed? Is it the same? Is it different?
No,
what's it like for you?
It's very different in the sense that, Coheed from the get-go has always been Claudio coming with a skeleton of a song. There have been songs where if he likes a riff that I have, and we'll build on that. And and he's gonna end up writing the song to that, like, and it could be, a song like we had a song called 10 Speed, okay, and I'll use that as an example because it was one of the more known Coheed songs, and so all I had was like what intros the song, like, and it's I wish I had a guitar, because if you don't know the song, then it doesn't make any difference. But he added a harmony above that. That became the verse. And really, in actuality, that was a jam that we were doing on tour. And the band, we all kind of looked at each other and we were like, this is cool. But we had a verse, right? And so then he came up with a chorus lick. And then I think we kind of did the bridge together in like a rehearsal. And then he wrote all the vocals and stuff and made it, a song. So those have happened. But for the most part, there's, and there's a few songs like that for sure, because we grew up playing together and we do have that kind of communication and that's my favorite times, when we build songs like that. But more often, it's going to be that Claudio has, it used to be a skeleton of a song on acoustic, and, sky was kind of the limit as to how we were going to get together as a band and arrange that. But as time, passed, and and studio equipment and gear was easier to acquire, and endless tracks became more of a, it would become kind of like, no, this is more what I was thinking for the song. And that goes back to what we were talking about before. Sometimes you get protective of that and like, oh man, I want to be able to write more. But, and he definitely, there have been things that as a band we've like worked out more and stuff, but it's more starting with him no matter what. Or no matter what, he is the gatekeeper of what it's going to be, because it's, that doesn't take away. It's interesting being in LS Dunes and all the other projects I've done. That doesn't take away from how it becomes like actually at 45 also, I've looked back on, I don't know how many albums it is. I think it's 10, I don't know, 11. But I mean, like, if I were to look at that, like, there's plenty of my DNA, which sounds nasty, but there's plenty of what I want to represent me all over the place in there. And some of that, I've finally come to the conclusion, is just in our friendship and what we've been together as basically musical fighters, because we've had to swim upstream a lot of times. We've had to fight a lot of hardships to keep Coheed and Cambria above water, and you kind of have to be proud about that. Like, I guess I'm in a place right now, we're about to go on tour, and I'm proud of that. But the difference with writing for LS Dunes, songs come from all over the place. Some of them, a majority of them on Past Lives even, like, started with bass lines. Tim Payne was very instrumental in the beginnings of what kind of what I described about if I had a riff and Claudio was going to build on that. Well, Tim had bass lines, and we would all build on those bass lines. But the same goes for either Frank having a guitar part or me having a guitar part. There's a couple of things that even started on drums. Like, it was like Tucker had a beat. So, which was intriguing at the time, because we were sending things back and forth via email and text. And that was Past Lives. The newest stuff that we have I've been working on, and I'm not going to hold back. I don't have dates. I couldn't be more excited about the record, but this was basically us getting together. We had a lot of it worked out and demoed out, but a lot of it was us in the studio together and working out the songs, arranging them together. We did a whole process that I haven't done in a long time with the new LS Dunes record. But still, all the songs came from different places. And Anthony, too. I mean, a song like 2022 was a song he had, and it was a song he had, and he wanted to hear it. And it was before we decided to be LS Dunes, I think. He said, I want to hear this song. Or we said, here's your song back on LSD. And it was all over the place. I think that's even before we decided on the name LS Dunes.
Yeah.
But we said, here's your song back on LSD, and he loved it. And it's basically we each have ideas and none of them get denied. But we have developed a band sound so that no matter where it comes from, especially with Anthony's voice on top of it, it has an LS Dunes sound.
Oh, yeah.
But the new record, I think, is really going to excite people because it's all over the map in the sense of like it's the sound, but I think that we've kind of like become the band. Well, I think it's surprising. We've become the band that we're supposed to be sonically and together, but at the same time, we didn't even know what that is, and I think that this album represents that. I think Past Lives was like, kind of like just us stepping into the water, and this is us like basically jumping full in. And with the Coheed record that we had been working on for quite some time, I think that it's like all over the place in the sense of like musically expressing what Claudio's feeling. But what's cool about it is I get the chance to adapt to that. Every one of us, whether it's Josh, Zach, or whoever, to adapt to that and try and, it's almost like you get to put on that costume to fit into that song. And then all of a sudden you figure out that a part of that vibe, whatever that song is, lived in you anyway, because I'm sure that you're the same way. Like I'm if you could look at my record collection, there's no like complete theme of, oh, this guy just really loves this type of music. No, it's not that way. Like you have the Willie Nelson shirt on. Like, I mean, I have plenty of Willie Nelson records that are just as important to me as the Minutemen records. I have plenty of, Sabbath records that are just important to me as the Leonard Cohen records. I almost said Coheed records. Yeah, as the Leonard Cohen records. But it's and the same goes for everybody else in both those bands and anything I've been a part of. Like I in hardcore bands, and none of them really even listen to hardcore very much. Well, they love it. They grew up in it, but they listen, they come around, and it's funny. Oftentimes you're like, especially with dudes that I know that grew up in the New York hardcore scene and stuff like that, they listen to a lot of hip hop and reggae. And that makes sense, which I love. I'm a massive fan of like a lot of reggae and hip hop, but I like country music just as much. Old country music.
Yes.
George Jones, Waylon Jennings, stuff like that. Like, but yeah, you asked me a question about the difference, and I went on a whole highway of information.
That's
what I do. Sometimes you got to reel me in, man.
No, that's what podcasts are for. You're supposed to just go. You just go and see what happens. But
there is a difference. There's not a difference in where it ends up when it comes together, because especially like I'm super excited because we're about to go out with I think I mentioned it already, but we're about to go do shows with Primus.
Oh yeah,
and
I've been paying attention.
We all grew up loving Primus, and they meant so much to us all musically, especially to Claudio. I mean, I have memories of him, actually turning me on to a lot of Primus stuff. But it's going to be that we all get together, and when Coheed's together on tour and we hit that stage, all those personalities are there full throttle. It doesn't matter where the song came from that we're performing up there. We've all made it ours to perform it, And the same thing happens with LS Dunes,
Yeah.
So there's these differences in where the initial song comes from, but it's a band, and we're all different personalities, and it becomes like a family. And I've missed the Coheed family, so I'm looking forward to getting out there with that. And yeah.
Well, actually, I wasn't sure if there would be a place to insert this into the conversation, but when I mentioned in the message that we've passed like ships in the night, I kind of meant that somewhat literally, because the last time you guys were in Portland, I was hanging out. I was the weird guy hanging out side stage with James. He invited me to come.
That's why you look so familiar, too.
Yeah.
And I followed you I've been following you for a long time just because I'm fan, but I didn't know that if I could have put it together, you and I would have probably hung out then. But, so that was with Coheed?
Yep.
Okay.
This last tour. Yeah. And he invited me out. We've been buds for a while. And he was just like, "You want to come?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And,
we're pretty hungover.
I heard you say, like, "We did it, man. We did it."
Yeah.
Hey, you look good though. It was a good show.
So in the rarity that, I remember that was like, we were up pretty late the night before and we were like just listening to a bunch of tunes, probably Waylon Jennings. Probably went from Traveling Wilburys to Waylon Jennings, then over to the Bad Brains, then back to who the hell knows. We were, I had some great listening. I'm looking forward because James will be out with us again. Like, that's one of my favorite things to do. And yeah, Boost doesn't even have to be involved. I just love sitting and listening to music. I love music documentaries. I love sitting and listening to endless amounts of music. I love, kind of eat it and breathe it, reading all the dorky rock books and gear books and
all that stuff.
Couple that I've caught up on recently that I was like, I'm not going to have any interest in that. Like, I read the Jimmy Page, I got his illustrated, the photo book, of all his gear that he used throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
It was mind blowing. That was so cool.
I haven't seen that yet. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I can get it upstairs, but it even has some of his wardrobe and stuff, which I was like, I remember that. I had those posters on the wall with his Zoso uniform and all that. But I mean, when he talks about the things he used on specific songs, he actually has the guitars lined up, the amps. He did photo shoots with the gear because he still has a lot of the gear that was on specific albums and songs. Wow. And I didn't expect it to be that, and I'm glad I got lost in that, to be honest.
That's way cool, man. Well, yeah. Moving on to gear, I guess, a little bit. This is supposedly a gear podcast, even though, it rarely is these days. But you have always seemed to lean towards, at least from what I've seen, a lot of Gibsons. And was that starting from Jimmy Page influence?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Of course. Yeah.
Those are probably my top two with Tony Iommi's in there. And of course, I have these guitar players that I've worshiped since I was 8 years old, right? 7 or 8 years old. And Jimmy Page, and funny enough, I'm wearing the shirt anyway, but Neil Young is my favorite songwriter ever. And that black Les Paul, which is actually a gold top that was painted black.
Yes.
But,
yeah. Black. Yep.
I know the whole history of it. But yeah, those were the two people that at a young age, and I didn't have. I had heavy metal guitars and this and that at first, and then I had this really guitar. I think that was first, and then I had an Ibanez, and then but I finally got a Les Paul Studio Light. That was a piece of. I got it from Robbie's Music, and my dad. I had to work for it, and with him, it was oh, come on, dude. It was $350, which then was a lot. I was probably about 13 or 14 when I got that. And I'm really pissed off, honestly, Blake, because I sold that guitar, and I used that for parts on original Coheed material that actually was on the first record. And I used it for some, I played that in basement shows, VFW shows. That was the only guitar. And Claudio and I would share it because we would only have one spare guitar during those early days,
Yeah.
And I sold that, and I'm pissed that I did that, but it happens. But I got that, and I felt now I've made it. I just remember being 14, I've made it. And it's black like Neil's, but it's just, I could be Jimmy Page too. And I mean, most of my favorite guitar players use Les Pauls. They just did. Most of my favorite guitar players, Mick Ronson, Joe Walsh, but there's a new breed of guitar players that that blow my mind, and they use all different guitars, and it's opened me up to it. I mean, I got a Telecaster just because it was Jason Isbell's Telecaster.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And I've used it on a couple of records because it sounds so good. I can't play it the way he does, but it's, it's cool because I'm playing a completely different style to use it for certain things. I might even bring it on the upcoming Coheed tour. But for me, that was very different. I've used Telecasters to record songs. I mean, I can specifically remember what guitars I used on songs, throughout the years. Like I mentioned that 10-speed song before. I used a Telecaster to record the rhythm tracks that I played on that. But I didn't ever use it live. I would just use them for the sound recording. I've always pretty much stuck to Gibsons live, always.
Well, and I'm wearing the hat even, but
I see it.
I own more Gibsons than anything else. My first real guitar was a Les Paul Special too. And it's kind of funny to be able to have these conversations now because you, Tepe from Thrice, I literally own a white Les Paul because of Frank. I saw him smash one in a video and as a kid, and I was like, you guys aren't that much older than me, but it was just the right age, right, for that to be really influential. And it was just like, oh, I want that so bad. And my whole life, and then I saw a bunch of hardcore guys, and of course then found Randy Rhoads using the white Les Paul Custom and all that. Everyone thinks it's Randy Rhoads. Like, oh, you got it because of Randy Rhoads. Like, actually, I got it because of Frank. That's really it. So
yeah, man.
Yeah, Les Pauls are like home to me. Even though they're not the most ergonomic thing in the world, I've played them for so long that they've become ergonomic feeling to me. I love them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I could ever drift away from it. I mean, you mentioned Frank. I mean, he's an example of somebody who still uses Les Pauls, but he doesn't use them as often at all. Like he's uses Ernie Balls a lot. I think and Fender, but
he's got a sick Novo too. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got endless guitars. I mean, he's a pretty massive gearhead when it comes to guitars, amps, and effects and. Claudio's very much like that. Of course, James is. I mean, these people have actually opened me up more to it because I've kind of always been, give me the guitar that feels right, and I'll plug it into something. If that doesn't sound right, let's plug it into the next thing, and people tell me what I'm plugging into, and I won't take it in. I take in the guitars, as I said. Like I can remember, like I have a pretty damn good memory for what guitar I used on what, but I can't remember what amp. But just last year, I got one of those like Fender 59 Tweed, the little mini ones that Neil Young used on of like, and it was the most I ever spent on an amp, but I just wanted to see if I could have that sound. And I used it on Old Wounds, which was a song that L.S. Tunes released.
Yes.
And it sounded incredible. Mission accomplished. Now I have that thing, and if I want that sound, I know where I can get it. I got to be honest, Blake, I never was like that. I was like, I would always turn to other people. And that's why it's cool to be around James or anybody and just be like, hey, this is the sound I'm looking for. What do you think? But maybe I'm growing up a little bit, and I'll be able to understand what I need on my own a little more. I don't know.
It's a deep, dark rabbit hole. Once you get like in it, like I remember being more where you are with it. And it was just like, I plugged into like my first tube amp and I was like, what is this? This is so different. I didn't realize that this was going to be such a thing. And now here I am. It's dangerous. You got to be careful. Amps. You got to be careful. It gets dangerous. But it's so rewarding, I think, to know what you're looking for and to be able to achieve it. Other than like I want that sound and I have no idea how to get there. It's frustrating. You're trying to write with something in particular in mind, and you're trying to create with something in particular that you want it to achieve, and you can't do it because you don't know how to do it. Especially as a kid, it's so frustrating, or at least it was to me. Do
you say with a kid?
Oh, well, as a kid. Like,
as a kid.
Yeah.
I was like, you're going on to a whole other thing. I was like, don't allow him in the shed.
Oh,
No,
oh, my
that's
kids
why I
come in
have
the
the
shed.
studio
They bash
space
on
I've had.
things out
My
here.
kids want allowed. It's plug in and play and try and get it done before they come out. That's what it is to try and record in this house.
I believe
But
it.
yeah, as a kid, like I just remember like it was sometimes it was an overwhelming playground. It still is to me. It's an overwhelming playground, sonic playground to figure out what sounds good. And sometimes I just don't think I know. I think I'm just more of a melody person. And I look to other people to say, hey, this is the melody. What do you think the right tone is? You know, I've been that way a lot of my life. I think the thing I have to offer is some sort of melody or some sort of like idea in the arrangement or something that takes the song up a little bit or helps it. And I need somebody else to say, yeah, but you're going to want a memory man and you're going to want, you know, and it's going to really bring this out in the part. And I'll say, okay, let's do it. That's the one thing is I've never had like the ego. Okay, so I could be like, man, I really want to get on this song because I'm a fan of it. And, you know, I want to have my stamp on it, or I know what this song needs. And then I'm upset if I don't get that. But, what basically I've never had a hard time with is saying, if you think that I got something cool here, help me to see it through. I'm like I said before, I like collaborating. I like having somebody else. I don't get protective, even if I have a song. Like, you know, even if I have a song that has lyrics and everything, I've never been that protective of somebody saying, you know, I don't think you should say that there. I don't think that you should play that there. Okay. What do you think? Because I think I'm safe, like I said before. Hey, I'm already part of this.
Yeah.
I think that my contribution is so much part of this now that you can't remove it. So let's go forward. What do
Yeah,
you think?
I'm down to edit it.
Yeah, let's
That's fine.
cut it up, paste it. I don't give a. Let's just
Right?
go forward.
Let's
Yeah,
make it happen. Well,
yeah.
you said something crucial there, though, and you know, you look to others to get the tone, and you come up with the parts and the melody. The thing is, the tone doesn't matter if you don't have the parts and the melody.
Oh,
Like,
I know.
so
Yeah.
who cares? You know, at the end of the day, you
I
have to
know,
have
but
that
can't
root.
that tone and that tone and that sound can sure trash apart. That's what's interesting, man, is like you can have something that you know is going to work so well for a song. And if it's not the right sound, I've stood there in the studio and known. I've been on the control room floor, you know, or the live room sitting there going like, no, I know this will work. And everybody being like, yo, dude, it sounds so out. But I've had somebody come to my rescue and say, well, maybe you shouldn't be playing it with so much overdrive. Maybe it should be a cleaner sound. And let's try it with some delay. Try this reverb pedal. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, I couldn't hear it without this part now.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, thank you for helping me because I couldn't. All I knew was that there was something that would work here, but I didn't know how to see it through. So that's why that stuff is so important. And at 45, I'm trying to understand it more.
Yeah. Well, and I've talked about this particular incident on the podcast many times, but there was one time recording a record that there was this part that was so cool. It was working, but it wasn't. The song was boring sounding and weird and like, but on paper it should have been just perfect. And so I was just listening to what was missing, and I said, "All right, let's try something." And I grabbed a telly, bridge pickup, so I can't remember what overdrive pedal, into a Fender amp, and just cranked the treble, and everything was just spiky, and it sounded terrible, like terrible on its own. And then we recorded it, layered it in the mix, and
Blake,
it
you're freezing a
all
little bit.
worked. You know, it all came out in the wash, which I was not expecting it to be that terrible on its own and work that well in the mix. But the blend ended up being what we needed. And sometimes it's in a very unexpected place, the tone is, because you listen to some tracks in isolation and they sound like garbage, but in context, it's beautiful.
Blake, just so you know, you froze a little bit on that last like 20 seconds, and I couldn't understand the last 20 seconds. I got what you just said now, which I completely agree with. but I don't know if that's going to affect the podcast.
Oh, no. So I probably should have warned you that at the top. Sometimes that might happen based on internet gremlins, but it's still just recording us independently the whole time. So as long as you got the
sweet.
idea of it.
Okay.
Yep.
I know. So, but I completely
Yep.
agree with everything you were saying. So was that something you were producing, or was that something that you were like playing on yourself, or?
It was I was playing on it myself, but also like it was a pretty collaborative production effort. There was, the drummer was technically what we labeled as the producer for that project. But it was really all of us, sitting down, and it was really more collaborative than anything else. So I guess I could probably technically get a production credit on that one.
Oh, absolutely. Are you playing with anybody now?
No, I haven't had a band in a long time. I did my first solo record during the pandemic, which was I did that in 2021.
Can you forward that to me? Yeah, forward it to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of, I mean, that dovetails into something you were talking about earlier, where a lot of the hardcore guys listening to reggae and rap and things like that. I listen to a lot of punk and hardcore and country and stuff like that. People have heard me talk about my influences, all day. I've had a lot of them on this podcast. But this sounds like very explosions in the sky kind of cinematic things.
Oh, hell yeah.
And that's I don't know where it came from. All I knew is I'd been doing the gear stuff for so long, and I still like doing demos, and I wanted to do more demos, and I'm always going to do demos to show people what some of this stuff can do. But I got kind of tired of gear for gear's sake, and not for. I was like, why did you get into all of this in the first place? Got into it because you love music and you love making songs. So I said, forget about the gear that you need to showcase. You just need to come out here every night, plug in whatever you feel like plugging in with no regard for what it is. Just like, hey, that thing's speaking to me right now. And I was coming up with these crazy huge effects chains going to 2 or 3 different amps, and it was just the wildest thing. And I didn't care what I was using. It was just more like, hey, that thing's speaking to me right now. I'm plugging it in. That thing's speaking to me too. All right, here we go. And I would just come up with this stuff and record it. And it was a very strange experience for me, because it was one of the only times in my life where I got done and I would listen back and I wouldn't understand. Like, I was like, I did that?
That's the best, isn't it?
Yeah, like, I can't believe I did that. That's so weird. And the whole record's like that.
And sometimes, like, if it's actually really, really cool, like sometimes, and it doesn't even have to be guitar stuff. It could just be some sort of loop but you're like, I didn't know that I even had interest in creating what that sounds like, but I really like it, like, so yeah, I can't wait to listen to it. That's kind of what I had at this spot, right? My friend Evan and he played drums. I mean, like, we created all different vibes, and we're trying to do is crack the egg on the sync world.
Yeah.
And we still are. We're working with a friend of mine who's like he's actually moved up in the company, but it's called the Diner Music, and it's out of Manhattan, but they're all over the place. But they do a lot of sync, and they work with a lot of advertisement campaigns. And we basically were like, if we create any type of music we want here, hopefully somebody could use it for something. And we're still kind of on that tip. But we wound up doing all this different music with a bunch of people. I mean, we had a hardcore band too, which actually we released a couple songs to say goodbye to the studio a couple of days ago. But we were doing that for a little while, and so that band Zero Trust would record there during the pandemic. Like, when we got this space, it was like 2 weeks after we got everything in there that we were standing around and we were recording like stuff for that band, and we found out Tom Hanks had COVID, and it was like, oh, that means everybody's got it,
right.
Like,
Tom's got it, everybody's got it. Yeah.
Tom and his wife are in Australia with COVID. That means we're all. So I just remember all of us being like, this is for real, and finding out the schools were closing. We all were like, oh, they're asking us, they're saying that maybe schools will close this week. So it was like, okay, we're going to make an agreement that we'll start working here. I mean, L.S. Dunes, none of that, like, there was a Coheed record that was almost like, I think, done by that point. And so we started in on that Zero Trust stuff, and then that kind of like started to wind down, and LS Dunes came into my life, and we still were dealing, like, because if you think about it, that first year was like, maybe we're going to work again, maybe we're not going to work again, and maybe we're going to, and then it turned into like, it ain't happening still for a while,
Mm-hmm.
I remember that first summer where festivals were starting again, but then they were getting canceled. And I'd say like maybe a few months before that was when it had been like 8 or 9 months into the pandemic when it became like, all right, well, we're still going to be sitting on our ass for another winter. And thank God LS Dunes came into my life. Thank God Tucker, because I met with Tucker to do like a cover band kind of thing before that. Like it was a fun thing, but it was cool that he thought of me and that Frank wanted to be involved and everybody, Tim, Anthony. But so
How
that was
did
like,
it actually happen, though? I actually haven't heard the full story from anybody. I've just bits and pieces. How did it actually happen?
well, our friend and had hit us up. A mutual friend of ours hit us up and was like, um, and actually he's the manager of Thursday, still, our friend Paul, and he had said, hey, Tucker was like interested in, and I had talked to Tucker. I don't know. How it really happened? It wasn't just that he did that. It was that we did the Thursday signals thing. And we had all already opened dialogue, me, Frank, Tucker, and Tim, about starting to send stuff back and forth. We agreed that if it sucked, that it would be all good. We didn't have to do it. But that winter, we got together for the signals thing, and we had all sent each other one, which became a song called Antibodies, which kind of like I described before, I just had a bunch of riffs, and it was kind of arranged, but everybody added their stuff. And Frank had an idea, and we all added our stuff to it, and kind of arranged it a little more, and it was like, oh, okay, we have something here. And then we all saw each other at the signals thing for Thursday. I think it was Signals 2. They did like 3 of those during the pandemic when you couldn't have shows.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw them, and that was probably about 8 or 9 months into the pandemic, and we all saw each other winter of 2021, I think. It was like fall, winter of 2021. I could be wrong with these dates. That was a blur that whole time. I'm sure for you too.
Oh, yeah.
But we all saw each other and we were like, no, this is something we got to keep doing. And so the Signals 2 thing really brought it together, the Thursday Signals 2. And we completed a few more demos of just music, via email and all that. And then we were like, all right, well, we want somebody to sing on this. And Tucker kind of tricked Anthony. He said it was some friends of his from up the street. And he said, just add some vocals. And he added vocals to that song, Antibodies, what would become Antibodies. And we were like, this is it. We got a band, let's just keep working on this, and once it was all done and we had an album, we were like, this is too important. Like, this sounds good. We have a band that we now need to, this music is too good for us to just say, let's throw it out there and that's it. So we wanted to continue and work on it more and more. And now we have another record. And I think it's incredible. And I think that everybody does. And, I guess we all say that about everything. Somebody will say, well, what's the best Coheed record? Oh, the one we haven't released yet. It's like,
Well,
what's the best LS Dunes record? Oh, this record is the best thing we've ever done. That's what you got to do. But I think most musicians, and you probably feel the same way. You really feel that way because you got a charge in it. You've moved on to something else. I think that's why a lot of our favorite artists are constantly saying, and we are constantly saying, no, I don't want to recreate the same thing because I'm not going to have that charge. It's not going to have that feeling of like, this is like the best thing that I've done. Like, if you have that, then you're able to go out and promote it and feel good about it. And, if you just created something to try and to appeal to everybody else, it's not going to feel that good. And I'm proud to be in bands that don't do that,
Yeah.
But that's the story. That's the whole story of LS Dunes. But I still had this space in Nyack, which we're leaving, and my friend Evan and I were always creating different music. And I honestly, realistically, right now, I'm in two bands, which is more than enough. Like I'm in Coheed and I'm in L.S. Dunes, but I'm not in anything else that would be touring or anything like that. And that was the perfect. And I don't want to be. And that was the perfect thing to do down there was, and to continue to do if I find a new space or get a house is, like you said, just go in and like what you did, just create and not worry about what it's supposed to be for. Just do it for fun, and maybe it'll land somewhere. Who knows? I mean, I did do something with a friend of mine who's an incredible singer-songwriter, Soren Song, and we did this like Americana thing.
Oh, nice.
And actually, I'll forward it to you after, and you might like it.
Yeah.
Hell, I don't know how we're going to even release that. So, and I try and forward it to like people that, like, whoever's working for either band that I'm in, whether it's L.S. Dunes or for Coheed, they are concerned with those bands getting their records out. So you got me coming along and going, hey, I got this Americana thing, and I'm really proud of it. Do you think you could help me? They're like, dude, get out of here. We're trying to work on these other things you're doing. So I don't even know how we're going to release this thing, but it's cool. I don't know if you ever play songs on the podcast, but maybe you play one of the songs on here.
I released my whole first record on the podcast, actually.
Well, I mean, maybe I'll send it to you, and if you felt like playing a song in between this, there's one song that I like really, and judging by some of the stuff you like too, maybe you'll like it. I mean, it's like one of the songs is straight up like stand-up bass, guitar, piano. It's very Americana based. The other one's a little more. They're all Americana songs, straight up. Like it's very different for me what I did, and I recorded a lot of it in that studio. So it's like, yeah, it's as I'm describing it. It's sad to let that go, but I know there'll be places where I'll be able to do that kind of stuff in the future, and I'm just glad that so much is done right now. There's a new L.S. Dunes record. There's a new Coheed record. Let's move forward. You know?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually really looking forward to that. I didn't know that you were working on that kind of thing, and that is like very much one of the pillars of my musical taste is the country and Americana type of stuff. So, yeah, I'm actually really stoked to hear that. That's perfect.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. And then if you're like, hey, I like this song a lot, I mean, you're welcome to play it, because it's like one of those things where I think that we'll end up self-releasing it, or maybe do it through, through someone who's a low-key kind of thing. It's not, it's only a 4-song EP. But yeah, it's just been a mixed batch. But that whole, I don't know if you've ever worked on any of that kind of stuff, like trying to do sync music, and I'd love to crack that egg,
when I first dropped that record, the number one piece of feedback I got on it was that, like, wow, this sounds like it should be in a horror movie. And I was like, I want to do that so bad. And for a minute, I was pursuing it pretty aggressively. But I just, one of those stupid things where I shouldn't have, but so many things in the fire that was one that slipped through, was like pushing that area of music, which is, it's its whole thing. It's something that I've talked about with other people on the podcast, actually. A fella named Charlton, who runs a company called Franklin Strap. He releases a song because he does a lot of sync placement stuff. He does a song every single day, 365 days a year. I'm like, wow, I don't think I have that in me to do it every day for years on end. And he's like, that's kind of what it takes sometimes to break into that world, which is pretty wild.
You got to have a constant flow. I mean, and we were doing a lot of that, but now that we're getting out of that space, but like I went there today with just the bare minimum still there. Like I got a Chet Atkins guitar there for electric. The Gibson. Yeah, I got that big old Chet Atkins hanging out. And I got an acoustic that is actually Evans, my friend Evans, who I was sharing it with. And I was like, I'm just going to try, because we were trying to get a bunch of Americana sounding like stuff to hopefully get into this sync thing with the diner. And I was like, I'm going to lay down one more. And then now it's like an addiction. I'm like, tomorrow I'm going to lay down another. And just we literally have a week left there. And I'm like, I'm going to try and do a song every day for the next week. Not a song where it goes back to what I said. I'm laying a guitar and maybe some other stuff, maybe a bass, but I'm going to be like, hey, Evan, take this, see what you think. You can chop it up. You can rearrange it. but see if something comes out of this that sounds good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that, man. You know, I
Dude,
like doing it
yeah.
myself, like, which I would imagine is how you did yours. You just came in, you plug in, do it, whatever. But I love the idea of somebody else also saying, hey, I love what you did, but I really think that chorus should go here. And, you know, and that's what's cool. Like, even in Coheed world, like, I could say that the initial songs, you know, come from one place, but I like that I'm there too. And it was watching the little Stevie documentary and stuff, like that was one of the things, like, in their friendship, is like he would trust him to be able to say, yo, dude, you don't need to do that song on the record, or you can cut that song and it'll be okay, or you need that song on the record, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if I wrote a part that I'm like really proud of on it, or I had anything to do with the song. Like, that song should be on the record. And you need those people in your life, man. You really need those people.
100%. Yeah. And they're not always right, but sometimes they're really
No,
right. Sometimes
no.
they're really right. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? You're like, I'm glad I listened to you. Glad I listened to you
yeah.
on that one, because I didn't see the thing, or I was missing the thing and you guys heard it. You know, you totally need those people. I'm going to take a brief moment so I don't get in trouble here, and go over to the Tone Mob Facebook group, who I always forget to tell them when, like, guests that they probably have heard of are coming on, but I remembered for you. So let's see. And I asked them, like, hey, do you got any questions? And generally everybody was just really excited for this
That's
episode.
cool.
Yeah, so
Makes me
that was
feel
cool.
welcome.
We kind of touched on this more in a songwriting capacity, and you hinted at it a little bit here and there over the conversation. But Matt Dewson, he asks, what is his and Frank's approach to two guitar parts, and how does it differ from Coheed? We kind of talked about the songwriting part of it, but, like, is there a difference when playing live? I don't know if you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
I mean, the approach is different, in the sense of how it's coming about, which I described.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's guitar approaches, like, which is not something that Claudio and I haven't done, but like I said, we don't do it as often because generally he's going to have the song, okay?
Yeah.
But with
Yep.
Frank and myself, there have been songs built where, you know, I have a verse riff and I'm like, I just have this right now, and he writes like a chorus riff, you know, or progression, or even a bridge that goes, and everything goes back to whatever that verse was, and then we build the song out of that. And one of us is going to end up laying some leads. It turns into, like, you know, basically who adapts which part and how the song. We do it very organically. We don't dissect it too much.
Okay.
But it's very song by song based. And quite honestly, with Coheed, it's song by song based with that kind of stuff too. Like, because there's Coheed songs where Claude could have a bunch of guitars, but there's Coheed songs where he concentrated more on just the real, like, you know, meat and potatoes of the song, especially if he built it from piano, because Claudio builds more from piano and keys, you know, nowadays. So if that's the way he built it, there's more room for me to come in with a bunch of guitar melodies or ideas like that and say,
Mm-hmm.
does this work? And we'll sit and go through it together. But Frank and myself, like, it's really cool. We developed, it's like almost like there's certain things we don't even discuss it or dissect it. With this album in particular, there's some stuff where he would play it and I would just be like, I love that riff. I'm going to add a harmony to what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And just harmonize with his guitar part. And then evolve into something else that maybe I'll play that wraps around it or something. But especially if I'm taking the lead, or, you know, if I'm in the lead role of that, which we switch that, you know, and in Coheed, Claudio and I have switched that. So there's a lot of similarities. It's just, what's interesting is with LS Dunes, even though we don't discuss it, we usually end up with something that we're both pretty blown away by, you know?
Nice.
And his the difference is too is his rhythm playing is completely different than mine or anyone else I've ever played with. Completely different than Claudio. And I absolutely love how like it's just this powerful raw energy that I couldn't recreate the way that he does. You know, that he does like his chord progressions and stuff. Yeah, I can't say enough with how much like he brings to the table in that sense where it's like, which I'm sure he's done with every band he's been a part of. I mean, clearly, but I mean, it's like his confidence is very helpful to be in a band with because he'll just be like, I know what we should do, you know, and I love that because it's one of those things where if you're a collaborator like me and you're looking for somebody to say, yo, this is a really cool song, but I really think I got an idea of what we can do with it, then I'm like, cool, let's go.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of looking for that, and he definitely gives that. So from a guitar standpoint too, that's just kind of how he rolls. Like if we're working on something, and especially when we're working on something in the studio, if he heard me play something and he was like, yo, what was that? I've tried to switch things. I've gone through this with everything I've done. Claudio and I have gone through this numerous times. I doubt a lot. So I'll have like a lead riff or something, and I'll be playing it, and I'll have it on demos, and I've been playing it for however long the song's kind of been in its infant state, and then it comes to recording it, and I will finally be like, well, I never really liked what I was doing there, so I've switched it to this. And people will go, why are you going to switch that? Like, that's what I liked. Like, we liked what you were doing. Leave it.
Right. We would have told you if we didn't.
Sometimes I need somebody to push me into that. Or to say, I don't like what you're doing. Tell me. And it's like, all right, let's sit and think about it. And I think that we've gotten together in a good part of our lives where, and he uses that word a lot, it's not to be too precious about things, Frank would say. And it's like, if he turns to me and says, yo, I don't know, that seems like that's a little busy there, I'm not going to be offended, you know? Like, I'll be like, let me go back to the drawing board. And I'm that way with Claudio now. Like, I think because we grew up together and there's that, like, you know, big brother kind of thing, and it would be like, well, you know, but I don't have that as much anymore. If it's like, I don't think that sounds good here, I think that takes away from the vocal or this and that, I'll say, all right, well, let me work on it more. Let's work on it together. Let's see what works. And, yeah, I just feel like growing up to be like a person that serves the song, as you said, is, you know, it's kind of always what I was meant to do more. I'm not the person that's going to tell everybody what to do. I don't want to be. But I definitely want to be there to give my opinion and try and serve the song, you know?
Yeah. I love that. All right, let's see what else we got in here. There's a lot of, like I said, it's kind of a longer thread, but a lot of it is, dude, that's awesome. Dude.
Nice.
There's a lot of dude. Here's a really good question. This is a really, really good one. It's from my friend Kyle Bull. Kyle has a fantastic YouTube channel for everybody. He's been on the podcast before, listeners. Kyle's got a great YouTube channel. Probably the biggest high gain amp nerd I've ever met. The dude really knows more about high gain amps than I even knew was possible to know.
Nice.
But he says, yes, I love this dude's playing. Coheed and Cambria is one of my favorite bands. I have amp nerd questions. On the video for Welcome Home, they have what appear to be unbadged Bogner Uber shawls. Is that what was used on the recording of this?
No, I used the JCM 800 for
Okay,
Welcome
there you go.
Home.
All right.
We were using Bogner's live at that time.
Got it.
I used a Marshall for the sound on I think even for the solos from for Welcome Home. I definitely used a Marshall on that.
You know, it sounds more like a Marshall too, so that pencils
for sure.
Of course.
Ubershaw worked great for while we were doing that. You know, I'm on Axe Effects now, so I'm
so,
on those. I'm on those fractals, baby.
so you're playing whatever you want then, technically.
Well, basically, I mean that's why I created the sound that to me sounds pretty close to what I'm recording. No, I don't use those for recording. I still use live amps, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like what I try and recreate is closer to the Marshall as opposed to the Uberschall. But the Uberschall was used, I think, on No World for Tomorrow. I mean, even I'm pretty sure I used it, and I'm pretty sure Claudia used it for certain songs.
Mm-hmm.
So the Uberschall was part of our lives. I think that was kind of the end of it by then. Oh wait, never mind. It could have been on the Uberschall. Might have been on. We had an album called "You're the Black Rainbow" and an album called "Afterman," and the Uberschall might have made it on those albums, but don't quote me on that. I don't know.
Okay, cool. All right, well, I've got a couple classic questions that I ask every time to wrap up the main episode before we go over to Patreon and see what kind of shenanigans we can get into.
Absolutely.
But before I do that, I like to give the guests a chance to take the floor, promote anything you want to promote, shout out anybody you want to shout out, say anything you want to say. You're talking to a few thousand people right now, so go for it.
I'm not going to. Basically, Blake, I did that. I already did that. Think about how many things I talked about that I'm like, this album's done, and if you want to play this on the podcast. But yeah, I mean, there are plenty of things coming up. What do I want to promote that's happening in the immediate future is these Coheed shows that we're about to go do. We're about to tour with Primus, which is a dream come true, and we did shows with Incubus already a year ago, and we get to go do a couple of weeks with them, which is massive for us. And then after that, there's a bunch of festivals for both bands, for both Coheed and L.S. Dunes, and then L.S. Dunes is doing a Rise Against tour. So that's what I got for now, because I think the live music, this is the time for the live music, right? We got the summer into the fall, and then everybody starts to get their winter coats on out here. So, I think that's what I got.
Cool.
To promote.
Love it.
Tour.
Love it. Well, yeah, when you get over here back to the Portland area, hit me up. We'll
I am.
Yeah.
We're gonna be. Yeah, you got to. Now that I'm gonna know, you got to hit me and James up and come out, because we're gonna be out there with Primus in 3 weeks.
Absolutely.
So,
yes.
Yeah. I'll have family out there. You can meet my kids. Yeah, come out.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. That sounds like a great time. I'm stoked, man. All right. Final questions. First one. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Yo, it's just Metal Zone because of what it meant to us. Yes. And just the stories that have still surfaced. I mean, even every time I see Steve from Thursday, he's always like, I just remember when we wanted to lend you, we told you we had to lend you some new pedals because you and Claudio both, we didn't even have tuners. We just had Metal Zone pedals. And they were like, we got it. And Metal Zone got us through so much. But I have a side story. Do we have enough time? I have a side story.
Oh, yeah, we got
really
time.
Cool about
Absolutely.
Boss.
Please, go.
Okay. This is a funny story, and I don't think I've ever told it on anything. But we did a thing with Boss, and it was around the time when Coheed and Cambria released an album called No World for Tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And Boss invited us to what had become a Guitar Center by then, but was Robbie's Music. So they invited us to come do this Boss pedal thing, and they gave us some pedals, and we came and talked about what Boss pedals meant to us growing up and in Coheed. And I had worked in that Robbie's Music at a place called TSI. I think it was Technoserve Industry or something, but they would fix amps and they would fix gear and stuff. And I was just doing computer, basically it was 98, 99 maybe 2000, but we weren't full on touring quite yet. We would get to certain places and have to come back because we all had jobs and all that. We weren't willing to just get in the van and let it all go quite yet. But we were trying to, you know, we had a band by then, I think. But so anyway, I was also taking credits I had decided I wanted to get my associate's degree. So I was taking credits at school. So in my defense, I really was going to school too. But a lot of the time I would be like, I got a gig or I got to go to school, and I would call in, and they were just getting tired of my. They would tell me to take out the garbage, and I would go over to the guitar section and be picking up guitars, and they'd catch me and they'd be like, "You're supposed to be in here." My whole point in working for them, though, was to be in the music store and learn about amps from the guy. And he never was teaching me anything. I'd be like, "Can you show me what you're doing and fixing that? You got to get out there, and the customers are going to come." And he wasn't very nice, okay? So whatever, but I tried to. So one day he fired me.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, there's nothing I could do? No. And I'm going to walk you out. And I was like, why? I'm fine. I'm not going to like go postal and go all over. I don't know if that's an appropriate thing to say anymore. Go postal.
I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Edit that. But I'm not going to go crazy and start beating people up and destroying the store on the way out. You don't have to walk me out. And this dude walked me out and like was telling, you know, made it a scene, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was there, 5 years later doing the boss thing. And some of the people remembered me. And the place in the back, nobody was there. And I was like, do the same people still own it? They're like, yeah, they're here once in a while. I was like, yeah, tell them I was here. Win. It was a win.
That is a win.
They talked about it, and some of the people were like, oh, wow, like that guy got fired here 5 years ago.
Dude, I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast. It's somewhat related, but I was working at a Caterpillar dealer back in the day. About 2000, would have been probably 2008, 2009.
That must have been interesting.
It was sucked. Yeah. But a lot of listeners know this, but me and my dad restored an old Camaro, and it's like my baby. So I had just happened to drive that car to work that day, and they, you know, brought me in, and they were like, "Hey, yeah, the company sold, the dealership sold to a different dealer, and we're going to lay off you and a bunch of other people." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great. Okay. I'm sure glad I put in all this time here and, you know, was told promises that then never came true and yada, yada, long story." But, it was really awkward because like I was pretty good friends with all the coworkers. We had a good rapport, and I had my little work area and like my toolbox and all that stuff. And they same. He's like, "Well, we have to walk you out." I was like, can I go say goodbye to my coworkers? Because like I might not see them. Like we don't really talk to each other outside of this. And this was like pre-social media being a big deal, you know, type of thing. I'm like, I'm probably never going to see these people again. So I'd like to tell them goodbye. Like, no, you can't. I was like, what? I was like, same. I'm like, I'm not going to do anything. Like I'm not
same experience.
Yeah,
I'm
not going to.
Insulting.
So like they walked me. I collected what I could collect. I had to come back for my toolbox later with a truck because it was too big for my car. But man, on the way out of there, I was like, you know what? Whatever. And I just laid the fattest strip of rubber when I was leaving that place. Just just sideways out of it, and just I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I called my wife. I was like, I got laid off. And I was like, but I wasn't mad, really. I was like kind of happy because I hated it, but I was mad that they wouldn't let me say goodbye to people. Anyway, same thing. I got walked out, and it's embarrassing. It's like
you don't have to do that. Like unless like it's somebody that had anger. I never did anything. You know,
that's the thing. I never did anything at all. Like it's very,
almost like a authority thing to be like, see, this is what can happen.
This is,
but so anyway, boss pedals represent that to me too. Victory,
yeah. Boss pedals equal
just
victory.
Like your peel out.
That's right.
Me coming back to do a boss pedal guest appearance was my peel out.
That's right.
5 years later.
I love that. I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Final question. What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Okay. You know, I think it's switched. My wife, some people might be like, ugh. My wife and I have been getting mushroom and onion pizza. Like mushroom and on a plain pie. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're not talking like a pizza company because, right? But like there's
Well, as
We're
specific
talking,
as you want to get. I can get pretty nerdy about it.
dude. There's this pizza there's a place called Posa Posa that's here in Rockland County where I live. It's in Nanuet, New York, and they have a stuffed slice called the Roman slice.
Oh.
Okay, and I was gonna tell him, because I'm not a vegetarian. I definitely I will probably never give up eating chicken, but I've tended to get away from pork and red meat and stuff. But I I will make I will make every excuse possible to say, it's okay for this slice of pizza, but it's like potatoes, sausage, pepperoni, and it's mixed in with their cheese. And it's still I had it about 3 weeks ago and I was like, oh dude, I think this is the best pizza. Now, do we consider that to be pizza? Because it's a specialty slice?
It's
Or are we
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because it falls almost in the category. I've said this on the show a lot, but I view like Chicago stuffed pizza. People are like, it's not pizza, and I'm like, well, it's a pizza cousin. It's kind of like a calzone. It's a thing that's related to pizza.
Okay, so then let's remove
Yeah.
if you come to New York, I'm going to get that for you. But
Yes.
and you need to try it. I wish I could bring it, but I know in trying that's not. I've actually wanted to have Chicago style delivered to my house. Matter of fact, I know people that have done it and frozen Chicago style from what's that one place?
Like Lou Malnati's or like one of those spots.
Yeah, but it's almost like the main place in Chicago that people are not. I'll text you later, but you can get it delivered to your house. But you could do it from that place too. I had that place that you just that name sounds familiar because that's one of the most famous, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had that place a couple of years ago. Giadero's.
Okay. Yeah.
So Giadero's will send you a frozen one, and then you could cook it at your house, which I've thought of doing that because I do love theirs. But that other place will do it too. Okay, that's a cousin. What I talked about was a cousin. There's a
It
place.
sounds delicious. Yeah,
there's a place in town here that's been a standby in Nyack, New York called Tarantella's Pizza. And I get a Tarantella's Pizza with onions and mushrooms, and boom. Amazing.
That sounds great. I love onions and mushrooms, so sign me up. That sounds delicious.
Yeah. It's hard, man, because sometimes I even like canned mushrooms.
Sometimes?
My wife loves that they're fresh. And I used to, and I don't know if you remember this, but I used to actually order onion and mushrooms, and I would see right away that they were canned and be stoked. But it seems like most people, I guess there was a collective complaint about that because most of the time you don't get canned mushrooms on your pizzas anymore.
No, it seems like it's usually fresh these days.
Yeah,
I could go either way.
But at least the fresh mushrooms that they put on at Tarantella's, oh, they're fantastic. And I love a good white pizza slice too, and they have good white pies there. And it's probably not quite pizza, but they have a salad slice where it's just like a salad on top of it with mozzarella cheese, and it's amazing. So Tarantella's Pizza here in town is it's been here since I was a little kid, and it has its off nights, but basically you're ordering the best pizza around.
Perfect. Well, everybody, I'm sure there will be some other questions coming in the Facebook group after we've already recorded, so sorry. That's just how it goes sometimes. Sorry. It's the internet. We can't all see everything all the time. But, dude, thank you so much for hanging out. This was really a blast. This is a great episode. I'm really excited to get it out there. And
hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
I hope it wasn't. I know I can go on tangents, but I enjoyed talking, so.
Yeah, I enjoyed having you. Thank you so much. We'll see what kind of shenanigans we can get into on Patreon.
So how does that work now? Do I sign out and sign back on? Or?
Nope, you just hang out. I'll hit the stop button and we'll just roll over and it'll get this uploaded and then move on. So yeah.
Beautiful.
All right, everybody. For Travis, this is Blake, and as always, folks, good luck and good tones. Wait. Don't turn off the video. Remember how I said there was a song on this one? A song you've never heard? Well, let's get right to it. Travis gave me permission, as you heard on the episode, to play this song on the podcast. It's, of course, up on all the audio versions of the show as well, but here is the video version. I just stitched together some footage, so don't think this is like an official video from them or anything. I just needed something to accompany it for the video version of the podcast, because this is a new thing. Never done this before, but check out this song. This is called The End, To Be Continued by Soren Song and Travis Stever. Let's get into it right now.
Why you gotta go and love me like that? Why you gotta give me new sensations? Why you gotta go through my emotions? Why you gotta give me good vibrations? Why you gotta shake my whole foundation? What you gonna build up on me like that? Why you gotta flow into my oceans? Why you gotta go and love me like that? I forsook this battle to live here on my own. But you shook my rattle, and I threw your stone. Why you gotta go and love me like that? Why you gotta give me new sensations? Why you gotta go through my emotions? Why you gotta give me good vibrations? Why you gotta shake my whole foundation? What you gonna build above me like that? Why you gotta flow into my oceans? Why you gotta go and love me like that? I forsook this battle to die here on my own. But you shook my rattle, and I threw your stone. Why do I always bleed into you? Over and over we tell all our stories if we thought this through to the end. The end. Over and over we tell all our stories if we thought this through to the end. Louder and stronger we push and we conquer, we damage, we name, we rebuild, we reclaim. Still we tell all our stories with heroes and villains, recasting, rewriting, rerunning, rebuilding, disgusting, delighting. These demons were fighting, inviting, creating, and then.
There you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I hope you enjoyed the track as much as I did. And if you need more, guess what? There is more. Travis and I chatted for a bit longer, and that is available over on Patreon. So for just $5 a month, you can get access not only to the ad-free feed of the show, but also bonus content that comes out every single week, usually in the form of extended interviews with that week's guest, including Mr. Travis Stever from Coheed and Cambria. This was so awesome. I've had such a wild week, and I'm flying out tomorrow, so I really need to publish this and get out of here. So thank you to everybody. Please hit like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, all that YouTube-y stuff. Thank you. Bye-bye.